Hi there, Coach Joe from Team Bright Hammer here. Welcome to the YouTube channel. I've got my first guest show today, and it's with Graham Roberts, who is the new performance coach here at Team Bright Hammer. He's going to help people with all things mental and preparedness for racing and for fitness and for life. So, how are you doing, Graham?
Good. You?
Yeah, not bad, man, not bad. I'm going to put you on the spot now. I've got 1 minute on my stopwatch. You've got a minute to introduce yourself and talk about, yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go in 3, 2, 1, and go.
Cool. Right. Yes, I'm Graham. Hi. Welcome to meet you. Nice to meet you all. I'm not Heston Blumenthal, if that's the first thing you're thinking on this video. Yeah, I might have been a Milky Bar kid, but who knows? As a performance coach, my role here at Bright Hammer and to support you guys out there is to work on the space between these two ears, because really that contributes quite a big component of what happens on race day in your training, alongside the physical stuff that this genius can help you with here. Why do I do it? I have a massive passion in life, which is to enable people to realise their full potential. And my time is very much invested in being able to do that, both for my family, but also friends and people who I share pastimes with, because it's great when you see someone move from there. I know we were just talking beforehand about that, Joe. And it was pretty cool. So yeah, that's kind of why I do it. Ask me any questions anytime, and I'm going to let those fingers count down.
That's what she said. Right. Okay, so thank you for that intro, Graham. That was awesome. Sure. Nice one. So we have some questions that we got the team to send in on things to do with mental preparedness and performance. So we're going to go straight in with a question from Mr. Keane on the team. And his question is, how long before a race should you start your mental preparation for that race? And should this entail undertaking anything special in your normal training up to race day? So, Graham.
Assuming you have a pretty baseline level of fitness, so you're training sort of quite a good number of times a week, maybe 2, 3, 4 times a week, really preparation for a particular race should start about 4 weeks beforehand. So the studies show in elite athletes that they can only concentrate on achieving one goal in about 4 weeks. So by the end of that 4 weeks, you start to plateau, and you're really just sort of getting, you're running out of gas in the tank of staying committed towards that goal. So I normally say 4 weeks beforehand, and at that 4 week stage, it's very much a case of looking at basically planning. The first stages are really understand what you've got ahead of you. So what's your current level? What's the race that you're facing ahead of you, and what challenges are going to be faced there? So if it's, for example, a Spartan race, as I experienced recently, there is a lot more strength-based component required.
Yeah.
So it's looking at your current level of strength and saying, right, I need to have some strength program in there. There's also going to be running involved, particularly if it's a beast, which is coming up in a few weeks in Windsor. You know, that's a half marathon. If you've never ran close to a half marathon before, that can be quite a challenging distance. Yeah. So, guess what I'm worried about. So when you've got that from there, you need to start then working out your training plan for that 4 weeks, because committing to that training plan and planning it with an expert like myself or Joe, you can then sort of sit there and go, right, I'm going to commit to that because I believe that's going to get me in the best condition for when I turn up on the start line.
Yeah.
Now, other things you may need to consider: the equipment you need. You know, have you got the right footwear? If you're doing an endurance race, such as the Agogi or the Hurricane Heats that are coming up next year from Spartan, there are other components that you need to be familiar with, and you can start factoring in your comfort with those components in that 4 weeks. So you might need to adjust your diet, for example.
Yeah.
You may need to start training twice a day, even if it's half an hour twice.
Yeah.
Getting your body used to not just doing that cycle of 1 day on, 2 days off, 1 day on, or whatever you do beforehand. But this is all then to give this positive base basically from what you can go for. Yeah. So once you start with that from there, you can then start saying, right, I'm going to commit to that with the belief that executing this plan to the biggest to the most, I can't even find the words now, and to the maximum potential that you have.
Yeah. That
gives you the best chance when you turn up to that race from there. So I'd say 4 weeks is probably the right time to start thinking about how you're going to plan the next month to get to that start line.
That's spot on, I think. With preparedness for races or anything in life, I think there's a sort of fine line between managing choices and managing compromises. If you don't prepare, then you're going to be managing compromises. So you turn up on a race and you don't have a waiver, or you forget your ID, or you don't have your shoes with you and stuff like that. If you've managed your choices by being prepared for something, then you're not going to have to manage compromises, which means you're going to have more up here ready for racing and being prepared for it and stuff like that. So I think that's quite interesting. So like a little question from me, like do you have any sort of system that you'd put in place like to help you for these 4 weeks? Is there like a hierarchy perhaps that you'd put an order of importance of what you would do to prepare? Or?
I think the important thing is having that conversation with someone who you perceive to have that expertise and that knowledge, because you need to. You're always going to be working to develop something. You know, some of the guys in the team are very strong. Some of the guys are very good at running. And we're always going to have areas that we can improve. It's then working out what's the biggest gap.
Right.
I think, and then going right. Whereas 60% of the time might need to be on running. With some strength work. But that's more to maintain the strength work and improve the running. So you're always trying. If you look at it like lots of different buckets, you got 4 different buckets not filled with sand. Thanks, Joe. And Nat.
Nat, don't blame me for that one. It wasn't my idea.
If you got lots of different buckets, you want if the maximum potential is all of them full, that's going to be very, very hard to achieve in 4 weeks. That takes a long-term program to get there. So what you've got to say is, right, which one's the lowest, and how am I going to spread that water about the most effectively to get them as close to the top as possible?
I mean, that's something from a physical training point of view. That's why we have periodisation. I know I bang on about it all the time, but it's very important to have stages of doing things. So, like, you know, in an off season is a great time to work on your strength. Doesn't mean you're not going to like work on your running. You know, you might maintain your distance in your runs, or you might be doing like quality speed work or something like that. But you know, the bias is going to go on the strength side of things. Okay, so you're going to be working on that. You do that for a period of time. Then you might work on your power for a little bit. Then you're going to try and get into race conditioning. And then what you'll see is basically, for example, that your strength is here in your pre-season. It drops off, but your performance will, as a whole, increase and be better. So having that preparedness and being like not just prepared in the 4 weeks before a race, but prepared for your season is really going to sort of help you plan out when you're going to fill these buckets that Graham was talking about, not with sand obviously, unless that is what you need to particularly work on. And you know, as I've mentioned in that article I did the other week, you know, carries are important, so maybe make sure that you work on those. So that is the first question. We've got kind of an amalgamation for this next question, because like we've had a lot of questions about race-related anxiety. We're not going to name any names because there's so many of you who are anxious about this that we thought we'd just throw it all together and then sort of, you know, give you a sort of overview, a sort of starting point of where you can sort of start to, you know, deal with this race-based anxiety and stuff. So, for example, the sort of questions we've had come in are high levels of anxiety normal before a race, especially on the start line? And do you have any recommendations for alleviating these feelings? Pre-race nerves, particularly playing a certain obstacle over and over in your head, imagining how it goes and being really nervous before a race starts. And then stuff like negative thought patterns creeping into your actual race experience. So when you're during a race, things not going quite how you want them to, and you know, like that negativity starts to creep in and affect your performance. How can you train yourself to think more positively in this situation? So we're just going to get Graham to talk about anxiety as a whole and stuff that touches on all of these little things, and hopefully we can give you a starting point of how to deal with this. So Graham.
Cool. Right, yeah, these are nerves, anxiety. It's a big thing that affects a lot of people. In fact, it affects everyone, is the honest answer. We all get it, and you never get rid of nerves. All you learn is how to positively use nerves to perform better. This means, so the best example I can think of is anyone who's ever done any speaking in front of people, or recording videos like this. Everyone gets a little bit nervous when they're putting themselves out there, and people. Are you nervous now? No, I'm actually all right. So I think it
must have been that brandy we had before.
Yeah, of course. You know, you've got to get rid of the nerves somehow, right? So brandy before a race is not ideal.
Unless you're a Saint Bernard dog, in which case go for it.
Yeah, go for it. So one of the first things to understand is where the source of those nerves come from. You know, that butterflies in the stomach feeling, that moment where you're there, kind of just feeling really, really anxious. The main areas they can come from are perceived capabilities versus your own expectations, your perception of your own capability versus the ability of others around you,
right.
or fear of the perceived unknown.
Okay.
And particularly in OCR races, no one knows what's ahead. You can get names of the obstacles, but you don't know what order they're in, you don't know what terrain's like, all of those things from there. So it's often a lot of that unknown that is coming to the fore, and your body's saying, right, I'm a bit anxious about this because I'm going to go through this and I can't really turn around over that wall at the start line. So conversely to that, you can get situations where people have no butterflies.
Right. Okay.
And I'll put this in there as just more of, because it helps set a spectrum of where we're trying to achieve, where you should be trying to achieve with managing your butterflies from there.
Yeah.
If you haven't got them, you're probably not invested enough in the goal. That's one of the options from there. You know, so you could be saying, well, you know, I'm ready for this. I'm good at this. You know, I've been doing exercise. I can go there, and through the goal I've set myself, I'm in a good condition to get there. The question I would ask there is, could you set the bar higher?
That's true. Yeah.
Because if the bar's not set high enough, you know, you're not emotionally invested in what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So when you have that from there, it's one of those things. It says, right, I'll probably need to look at this because there may be more.
Yeah.
You know, completing a race may be a great goal, and that could be a big ambition for someone.
Yeah.
But if you've already completed a race, why aren't you trying to finish in a certain place?
Yeah, this is true. Sort of like raising that bar for yourself, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Do you think maybe part of that would be that maybe you have people who can perform at a very good level, they can finish a race, they can do stuff, that maybe that they're not getting emotionally invested and setting the bar higher because they are scared of anxiety?
Well, they could be scared of anxiety. They could also be scared of themselves slightly as well. They might not have thought of it this way, but what they could be saying is, look, I've achieved lots in this. It took me a lot of effort to get there.
Yeah.
And do I really want to go through that again?
Yeah.
Then it's a case of weighing up how much do you want to still be at that level, get even higher.
Yeah.
You know, the UK champs is always there. There's the European champs. There's the world champs.
Yeah.
Both in Spartan and in OCR as a whole. And there's always a level above, from what I can tell, and there's levels beyond that still.
Okay.
So you might say to yourself, right, I've top 3'd in the Spartan race, brilliant, wonderful. Well, why don't you top 3 in the season?
This is true. Yeah.
And why don't I go and win one? And why don't I go and win a series event, so the whole season award, I'm the one that wins that?
Yeah.
That's where things can always get further. And there's a great book called Relentless, actually, by a guy called Tim Grover, who he talks about this concept of having goals beyond goals, because that keeps you focused.
Yeah.
So sometimes it may be a case of just readdressing that bar. Now, the other end of the spectrum is massively overconfident.
Right, yeah.
Sitting on the start line going, I have got this in the bag, which we've all seen people who can do that.
Yeah.
The question I would ask there is, if they're thinking about that and they're getting quite smug and they're managing the butterflies with that, I reckon they could miss something.
Yes, I guess so.
You know, any form of success, once it's achieved, there is always a window there where you could fall back off.
Yeah.
And you stop focusing on all those things that you've been putting, these little components you put in place that led to that success in the first place.
Yeah.
So that overconfidence can sometimes miss out one of those. Yeah. So you might start from the line and then someone's suddenly gone 100 metres ahead and you're like, how am I going to get 100 metres back in the end of this race?
This is true. I mean, because I think the thing with bravado and like putting that sort of like, almost sort of like, it's not really stoicism because that goes a bit deeper, but just that mask on, that game face of like, I'm it basically. That requires a slight disconnect from reality, which is obviously going to mean that you're not really thinking about the things that you should be thinking about, like maybe your technique or something, how you should be starting. You get really overconfident, you maybe start too quick or you don't start quick enough, that sort of thing. So yeah, I can totally get that. So do you think that anxiety is an essential part of success?
Yeah, I think it is. I think having some anxiety there is important.
Yeah.
It's then what you do with it to manage it.
Right.
So ways you can manage it. You can recall past successes.
Yeah.
So if you look at what you've achieved in the past and sort of say, well, okay, you know, I couldn't do that once, and now I can.
Yeah.
That can build that bit of internal positive energy that sort of says, right, I've got the ability to move forward from here.
Yeah.
The other thing you can do is trust your preparation.
Yeah.
You know, the age old fail to prepare, you prepare to fail.
Yeah.
You know, it's that kind of thing. So if you trust your preparation, if you trust that plan that we just talked about in the last question,
Yeah.
and believe in that,
Mm-hmm.
and execute on that,
Yeah.
and focus on that execution, that's a great way of managing that anxiety, because you can sit there and say, right, in the first 5 minutes, say, well, I kind of work on it. So I kind of work on it in saying, right, 15 minutes beforehand, before the start gun,
Yeah.
and 5 minutes after,
Yeah.
you should have a plan.
Yeah.
So, for example, Usain Bolt running the 100-meter final, everyone sees him laughing, joking, dancing around with everyone.
Yeah.
That's his way of literally switching off till that very last moment.
Yeah.
But as soon as you see him get told to take his marks, he's completely focused
Yeah.
on the next 100 metres ahead.
And then you don't see him until the very end when you
Yeah,
slow
yeah,
down.
yeah. It's miles away, and all the guys are looking at his backside as he's flying in front. You know,
That's
so
it, yeah.
but what he's doing there is he knows his process for that 15 minutes beforehand.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there, right, do this, right. Within that time frame, I need to then have my game plan that I've designed.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to work on my explosion out of the blocks, I'm going to
Yeah.
work on my drive phase,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to work in the phase at the end.
Yeah.
He's thinking about how I go and execute that plan, and you can do the same thing on an OCR.
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes beforehand, you can be dancing to the music, you can chatting to the lads.
Yeah.
But at some point before that gun goes,
Yeah.
you need to say, right, that's the challenge ahead of me.
Yeah.
This is the plan I'm going to go and execute. I'm going to put myself in this position. I'm going to run like this because the ground's like that. All those little bits that you've considered in the plan,
Yeah.
then go and execute on that, and just trust that that's what's going to work. Because if it doesn't,
Yeah.
you'll always learn.
This is true, yeah.
And everything's a learning cycle, and it's the only way we get better, really.
Exactly.
So you can use that from there. So that's some of the ways that you can manage it. But yeah,
That's cool.
they're always going to be there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's what you've experienced and stuff. Or...
I mean, like for me, I've had races where, like, for example, this season where I've felt very physically prepared and like ready to go, and just, you know, I've started out and I've been lousy, and then like I've had, you know, a good example is Dirty Dozen, Dirty Dash back in, I think it's April, May sort of time. It was an afternoon start, and I'm always used to sort of like, I'm used to training in the morning, I'm used to, you know, racing in the morning on sort of very light meal, because I don't do well after I've, you know, eaten sort of loads of food. And so turned up to this race, I wasn't expecting much. I just thought I'll start and I'll do what I can do, and I didn't really feel particularly anxious about it, and that was probably my best performance of the year. You know, I was quite quick. I mean, there was a couple of bits that I actually had some in-race anxiety, which happened when it came to the swim, and that was basically, I felt very tired at that point. I felt cold. I got in the water, and it took me sort of about 10 minutes to decide whether or not I was going to go or not, and then in the end I couldn't do it. You know, the anxiety was too high, and I had to run around an alternative route. That comes from sort of like something previous that happened in my life. Like, I'm not a strong swimmer. I did have an incident where I almost drowned in Cornwall years and years ago. So like stuff like that was playing in my mind when I'm tired. There's like that quote by the Green Bay Packers coach from the 50s. He said, "Fatigue will make cowards of us all," and it was a little bit of that. So I had a bit of anxiety in that, but all in all, I thought that was a really good race performance. But as you can see, even though you're not starting anxious, it can creep in at some point and it could derail you. My preparedness for that, I should have been concentrating on swimming more and training. So, you know, go through it like
so
that.
you can do a lot there to mitigate it. The other one, interesting one, is the anxiety can always make us eat more.
I like food.
So yeah, I do too. So you know, like general life, we had a shit day,
Yeah.
right? And you can sit there and people, I want chocolate, I want beer, I want stuff like that, and it feels a lot better. The similar thing happens when you get to the race line, and people actually put more fuel on, because like, oh, I need more food because what lies ahead is going to. But if I just pose for a minute, when you train normally, do you do anything special to eat more before you go and train?
It's funny actually. I think for me, because I've always got it in my head that I'm going to be sort of racing on a fairly empty stomach. Maybe it's because nerves mean it's hard for me to get a lot of fuel before the race, and you know, my stomach's churning. But like, I find that like I usually, when I'm in race prep, I'm training to be on a fairly empty stomach. So I race on an empty stomach, which is kind of the opposite of what I'm doing now, because I'm in pre-season because of injury. I'm working on strength stuff again, and that means I'm bunging a load of carbs in before I train, which means that my lifting's bang on at the moment. So,
You're looking strong, dude.
Ah, thanks. Anyway, so yeah, there could be something in that. Maybe my fueling strategy hasn't been good for some of the races. I thought I've been getting enough in, and maybe I haven't. Sometimes it goes like that. So
yeah, I think that's it. So it's always your body, your mind can do funny things to you, and you can do what you think feels rational.
Yeah.
But sometimes actually just trusting it,
yeah,
can make a big difference.
exactly. And like the thing is with being a coach as well, sometimes you've got it in your head what you think you need to do because you're so good at showing other people what they need to do, and you see them succeed from it. But then taking your own advice can be a little bit difficult.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, can be.
But yeah, anything further you'd like to add on anxiety? Or
I think that's probably it. As I say, it's unique.
Yeah.
It's unique to every single person, and I would just say to any of the team, just if you feel anxious at any point, come and talk to me about it. I'll happily chat to you about it, and we'll put some things in place that help you work with, because it is so unique. As you see, Joe just said there, some of his anxieties may come from something that's a long time in the past. So let's have a chat. We don't have to do it in front of everyone. And we can help put some things in place that help you manage that at the time when it hits you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Graham.
Cool.
That's part one of our little Q&A that we're doing with Graham. So if you have any more questions for any future shows, then feel free to ping them in. There's going to be the email as usual in the description, and also just hit that subscribe button and share with your friends. Be very happy if you did that.
Cool.
So goodbye from me.
Bye from me.